Hey guys, thanks for listening to the third episode. My name is Chloe.
And my name is Kennedy. Welcome to the Now or Never podcast. As you can see, we're in a new location. So, Chloe, why don't you tell us about all of the exciting things that are happening for you?
Yes, so I moved. So this is our location now. I was in my old place for like 2 years, and it was just time to get out of that little cave. So now I have windows and a lot more space and a little yard for Miss Ellie over here. So
Lovely. How are you adjusting?
like, honestly, as soon as I moved in, well, first of all, the move was me and Derek just did it by ourselves.
Oh,
like,
he came to help.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. I was
know.
worried.
Yeah, so usually like I've hired people to come move, but Derek's like, no, like you're not doing that. I'm gonna come help you. Yeah, so I was so grateful for him. And he tried to do as much as possible. So he was like, you just focus on like getting your stuff together and I'll carry everything into the moving truck.
So sweet. Moving is a pain in the butt. So like that's really nice. Did he drive down?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So the only thing that was like extremely hard to move was my mattress, because I'm not even kidding, my mattress weighs like 300 pounds.
I believe it. I believe it. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, so that was it.
Did you have to do more than one trip, or did you get like a big U-Haul?
Yeah, we just got a U-Haul. I still have a few other things in the old apartment and I have to go there. Someone took over. I did like a sublease, or not a sublease, a lease takeover, because my lease wasn't going to end until October.
Oh, shoot.
So I signed
it stuck for a long time.
Yeah, and I mentally just had to get out of there. I was not doing too hot.
Yeah, so, totally understandable. Do you feel like, because you lived by yourself before and now you have a roommate, so do you feel like that's going to be an adjustment for you?
No, I think her and I had such a nice talk before moving in together, just a realistic, like, we're adults, like we need to discuss before we live together, and we have such different lives, but we're also like cool and like friends and stuff. So I think that's helpful if you're not in the same friend group, I guess, or doing the same things.
I think it's like there has to be like a click when it comes to like living with like a roommate as like an adult, because it's not the same as when you're in college, and like you have to have like boundaries. It's like any other relationship, like a personal relationship, romantic relationship, like the roommate situation, you have to have boundaries too. So it's good that you're on like the same page.
I know we definitely had the boundaries conversation, so that was helpful before moving in together. So yeah, we just did one trip, and then some lady took my old lease, and I just have a few things left over there I have to get. So
Nice.
I'm like, oh, it'll be a good excuse to go to Trader Joe's, because this girl posted on her story. She was like, they're like, I sound like such a fat ass. She's like, these maple sausages are so good. And she's in prep. And I was like, well, if you're in prep and eating them, I could just eat them.
Yeah, for sure. That's so funny.
Yeah. So that's it.
Well, that's so exciting.
I know.
It's going to take a little bit of time to like get all your stuff together and like make it feel like a home. I feel like that's like the hardest part about moving. And like also like the part that you're like trying to like you just want it to feel like your space, and it just it can take a little bit of time for it to feel like that. So
yeah, and at my old apartment I had a treadmill, so I would just go to like 10 feet away, or I don't know, like 50 feet away, and go do my cardio. So I was like, well, how am I going to do that, because now I'm like a little bit further, I'm the same distance, I guess, than I used to be. And I just bought a treadmill. Nice. And I put it in the garage.
Nice.
Yeah.
From where?
Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
Good deal.
Such a nice treadmill. So I've been doing my cardio in the garage, and it's such a vibe. Yeah. Honestly.
We had a treadmill in our garage, but it broke.
You guys have bikes, right?
We do. We have, we had 2 recumbent bikes. Lazy. No, it's actually not lazy. It's a lazy person's bike if you don't try hard, but like the recumbent bikes, the ones that are like, that have like the back to them, you can push that cardio, but we have one that we like, and then the treadmill, but the treadmill's broken, so we just use it as like a stand to prop up our mirror for our check-ins, because we do our check-ins in the garage.
That's so sad it broke.
I know, but hopefully if we move and we're like in an apartment complex, then we'll have like how you did before with the apartment, the treadmills, or like the gym that's in the complex. So we'll see. If not, if we have like a house, then we'll definitely get a new one, because it's nice to have like versatility as far as like the cardio equipment goes, and you can find good stuff on Facebook Marketplace for like literally anything. So
I know.
That's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Have you guys talked more about your Tampa? We just talked about your Tampa move. I'm like,
I don't know. We actually like we're super excited about the 2 apartments that we saw, but I was talking to Joe earlier because someone that I follow on social media had posted like, oh, the Tampa gym scene is not the vibe. And I was like, what do you mean it's not the vibe?
Really?
Yeah, that's what they were saying. So, I personally liked it. He liked MI40. I think we could be there for like a year. And then if we wanted to move somewhere else, no big deal. That's kind of something that we had talked about, just wanting to like move all over the place until we're like ready to like actually settle down and like have a family. 'Cause both of our parents' families live here. So it would be a nice place to come back to once that's where we're at in our life, but not there yet. So
Totally understand.
we had like Texas on our radar. So we thought about like Austin or Houston. I think Dallas is really nice, but it's just a little landlocked. So
I
think Austin is landlocked too, but Houston is the closest area to like a beach in Texas, and I don't think it's even really a nice beach. So
that's what I've heard. It's not.
I'm just such a beach
anything.
girl, and I was landlocked in New York when growing up. So like I just
need
feel
it.
like Tampa would be the safest move to start. I think it'd be cool to live out west too, like in Colorado or Utah or wherever.
I feel the same way. I would love to live out in Colorado. It just seems like such a scary move.
A big
to
jump.
be so far from
100%.
the family.
We talked about like Nevada too, or like kind of like around the Vegas area because they have like a good
The
bodybuilding like fitness scene.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just to go from being like East Coast and then like have a huge jump to West Coast, and it would be the first time that Joe is living anywhere other than Charleston, so it would be a lot. But we'll see.
You would have to go over there and visit for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I think we'll go to the Olympia at the end of this year, which is in Vegas. So if we haven't moved by then, like we'll scope out places. But I don't think we're not going to have like a Texas trip or anything like that planned anytime soon.
Okay.
So we'll see.
And then next year we'll be going to the Olympia.
Yeah, for the boys.
Yeah.
They'll be in the Olympia.
Exactly.
Slay.
I know. That
Hopefully,
will be
fingers
dope.
crossed.
Yeah.
I always tell Joe, like, I know for a fact that he's going to be on that stage one day.
It's
Like,
just a
I
matter of
truly
time.
do. And it's, I don't think he doubts himself. Like, I think obviously that's the goal, but he's probably more realistic with like the timeline of it. And I'm just like, no, I know you're going to be there at some point for sure. So it's definitely exciting.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see.
Before you and Joe moved in together, how did you guys start the conversation of like you guys living together?
Oh, goodness.
Is that a weird question?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I think it's a good conversation to have because I think a lot of people have different views on this where, and you can speak to this point afterwards, but some people want to be engaged before they move in together. Some people want to be married before they move in together. Mine and Joe's situation, he had like just graduated so we've been living together for 2 years in July. He had just graduated from, undergrad, and I was graduating from PA school, and like right as I was graduating from PA school and he was about to move home, like my lease was up, and so he had just moved back in with his parents. He only had his house back over or apartment like in Clemson. So when he moved home, it was kind of just like let's talk about this. Like, do we want to move in together? Do you want to get like your own place? We spent all of our time together anyways, so it kind of didn't really make sense to have 2 different places if we would just always be at one location. And I used to think like I actually did a paper on this in college where I thought that it was for like a social something class. I don't remember, but my stance on the matter was like you didn't have to be engaged or married before you moved in together. And I feel like I've always believed that. And I wasn't at that point ready to get engaged because we had only been dating for like maybe less than a year at that point in time. So like I didn't want to rush that part of our life.
It's a lot all at once.
All at once. Yeah. And with him just graduating school, like trying to figure out what his footing as far as like what he wants to do with his like job and career, it was just like not a time for us to be engaged. And we actually had this conversation the other day. Like, we're both still not in a place where we like want to be like moving forward from that part of our relationship. Like, we're very happy with where we're at. And I think you just have to be on the same page with someone. So like I don't know, if one person feels like you should be engaged before you move in together and the other person doesn't, then that needs to be like a very serious dialogue, and you need to be like very honest with your communication about the desires that you have. Otherwise, like one person is always going to end up being upset.
That's so true. It's just what it worked best for you guys.
Yeah. So, and we were both on the same page. And have been, I feel like, ever since. I still don't feel like I'm at a place where I like am ready to be engaged or get married, and same with him. So it's just always, we don't have the conversation often, but like whenever it comes up, it's just an open, honest, like understanding conversation.
That's the best kind of thing that you can have. Just that open communication is what makes a successful relationship, I think.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on that? Like moving in with someone?
When I was younger, I feel like I would have probably moved in with someone I was in a relationship with, just because I was like, oh, I'm young. What if I don't like them after I live with them and things like that? But the older that I've gotten and in the relationship that I'm in now, I feel like it would just make more sense to me. Like if we're going to live together, we're doing this. I'm not 21. Like it needs to be a commitment, I guess.
Yeah. I think to that point though, you guys, how long have you been dating? Officially?
Not long, but we've known each other for like a year.
But how long officially have you been dating?
Since December.
Okay, so like a few months. But you're 28. And when Joe and I had first moved in together, I was only like 24, maybe 25.
I feel like it's so different.
So it's a little different. Yeah. Like you're 28, like that's kind of like the next step if you're like in a committed relationship with someone. Like I would, if something, God forbid, happened and like I had to start over and that was the case, like I would probably be agreed with like your sentiment of, if we're moving in together, like this is a commitment. Yeah. But it was just like a timing thing with me and Joe. Like we were both still really young and couldn't afford to really like, I mean, we probably could have, but like it was just like the best financial decision. And it was like a good move for our relationship as well, because when you do live with someone, you learn a lot about them.
You really know.
Good, bad, ugly, like you're in it and you always, like you have to work out your issues. Like there's no going home. There's no like.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, it is scary. But I think it either will make couples or break them. And you just have to have like a very good foundation and approach to navigate those types of like difficult situations for sure.
So how did your relationship change when you guys went from not living together to living together? Was it a huge difference?
No, not really, because we spent all of our time together, even when we weren't living together. Like even though I had my own place, like I was basically just like always staying at his house. And I think it was like an easy transition because we were so used to spending so much time together. But I think it was different because we had to like express particular boundaries of like how we wanted the living space to be. But it wasn't a difficult transition. I think like the hardest part was when him and I first started dating, we were just like obsessed with each other and like always wanted to spend so much time with each other. And I think when that happens, you can like develop a little bit of like codependency and like kind of like intertwining of like, where does Joe start and where do I start? Like, where does that end? You know what I mean? Like it can get very mixed. And so I think we kind of struggled with that at one point where when we moved in together, it was like, if you're going somewhere, like, oh yeah, I'll just go with you. Cause like we were so used to doing everything together, but like you can still have like your own like separate things. And I think that was like the hardest part, like having to navigate that. Cause you still need your alone time. You still need to do things for yourself. And have like that sense of like self-belief or like just whatever you enjoy doing that separates you from the relationship. And so that was something that like I've been working a lot on in the last year, because like I have the gym and I have my job, but I didn't really have any other like hobbies or interests outside of those two things. I just dedicated all of my free time to that and then my relationship and like my friends too. But it was just, what am I doing for me that I am like growing or enjoying that's outside of these things. So like I found like reading and like painting and coloring and just like different like creative outlets that like kind of seem silly,
No,
but
it's not.
it's something that I enjoy to do.
It's
And
a
I
nice
just feel like
hobby.
you know, I'm one of those people that, to the point of always like going to the gym or always working, like I feel like I'm always just go go go, and I never just take time for myself. And
You
so
need
it's kind of
something.
nice to pause and be like, sit down for an hour and read your book. Like you can do that instead of scrolling on Instagram or doing whatever
You need something
that
more
looks like.
fulfilling and calming.
Yeah,
Especially
exactly.
because in your career, you have to be very analytical of things that you're looking over. So being able to have a creative outlet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy that piece of it.
Do you guys have the same love languages? Or how you show love and appreciation?
Yeah,
for
we
each
did
other?
this like test like when we first started dating, just so we had like a good understanding of like how to show up for each other. And I feel like like it's honestly probably something that you should like reassess like every year, because I feel like my love languages can change,
For sure.
just depending on like whatever season of life you're in. We don't have the same love languages at all, actually. So it does kind of make it a little bit more challenging because like for me, I'm a words of affirmation girly through and through. Like actually it's hard. This is so silly because I feel like I'm all of the love languages.
No, I think we are. There's just some that speak louder than others.
Right. And so
Right.
like obviously like what are the other ones? Like words of affirmation, quality time, gift giving, physical touch, and acts of service. So I feel like I don't remember what they were when Joe and I first did this. I feel like pretty much words of affirmation is like always one that's like very high on my list. But to that point, it kind of has to be backed by one of the other like love languages, because if someone's just telling you something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's true. But that's definitely one of my main ones. And that's not how Joe shows love. So like I receive love through like words of affirmation, I would say. And then probably I would like tie quality time and like physical touch.
Is that how you show your love too?
Yeah, that's how I'm 1,000% like I show my love through words of affirmation, because I know that that's how I like to be loved. Joe doesn't care about words of affirmation. Like I feel like I could go like a week without telling him that I loved him, and he probably wouldn't notice.
Because he's like, oh, you show me every
Exactly.
day. Is he more of like an acts of service kind of person?
He
and
likes
quality time?
yep. So his love languages I would say from like a receiving end, his acts of service, and then also quality time. So like if I prep his meals for him, or if I like heat up a pan for him, or fill up his water bottle, or whatever that is, like something so small and silly, he's like, that is how he knows that I love him. Where I'm like, if you fill up my water bottle, thanks. Like,
Yeah,
you know
like,
what I mean?
whatever.
Like, you're so sweet. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but it's definitely something that like you just have to have the conversations about.
I think that's where some relationships can struggle if people don't talk about these things, because you could be saying how much you love him and how much he means to him, and that's just not going to
Register
mean
for him.
anything to them.
And that's
Yeah.
like that I think was like hard to navigate at first, and probably hard for most couples. But some people don't even know what the
I
love languages
know.
are. So they're like,
Right.
how are you supposed to have those types of like intimate, deeper conversations with someone if you're unaware of how you like to be loved?
100%.
So if you don't know your love language, there's like a million quizzes online. I would definitely do it with your partner. Do you know yours?
Yes, I read the book back in like
Oh,
2020.
nice.
Yeah, and yeah, so it was really helpful. But mine is definitely acts of service and quality time. I think is definitely acts of service and gift giving. Because if someone, especially the way that I show love, if I love you and I see your favorite energy drink,
Like you're gonna get it.
I'm gonna get it for you. And if they do that for me, it's such a small thing, but it means so much to me.
I feel like I used to be like, my love language used to be gift giving. Like I used to just like love like finding little things, and I feel like I still do that, probably just not as much as I once used to. But Joe definitely like gift giving is one that he like will show his love. Like if he like you know sees like a new drop or something from like the favorite apparel company that I like, or like whatever, it'll be like a random package that comes home and he's like, I got you something, and it's like super sweet. But he's definitely like gift giving is probably comes more natural to him, but he's been very receptive over the last few years of like hey, this is my love language. And he's like, you know, constantly like trying to improve as far as like, oh, you know, maybe it's not normal or like comfortable for me to like always be giving someone compliments because he doesn't think that way when it comes to love. But he's like definitely like, like you can tell when like the effort is being made. And that's the most meaningful thing, right? Is because you feel heard. Like, hey, I'm expressing, I need more words of affirmation or I need more physical touch or whatever that may be. And then your partner isn't just ignoring it. They're listening to you.
Right.
And that in and of itself shows you that they love you because they're like hearing what you're saying.
Yeah, they're validating your feelings, which is so important.
For sure.
Yeah.
So do you know Derek's?
Yeah, his is the same.
So that makes it so easy.
I know. And he's the most attentive man. Like when we're spending time together, no phone, like not that we're note checking your phone, but we just aren't even on our phones. And I feel like he just gives me all of his attention. And he'll just notice things like if my water's empty, he's gonna he'll fill it up for me.
That's sweet.
And he just I don't know, he doesn't let me touch a door. He carries all my stuff. He's he's amazing. But I think what you were saying too about how some people don't even know what a love language is or if it exists. That was what I struggled with when I was younger in a relationship. So when I was in a relationship in college, we obviously cared for each other, but I feel like I didn't know how to express my needs because we were so young and didn't know what those things were at the time.
I think that's like the beauty of getting older. Like everyone always says, you know, we're almost couple years from 30 and like everyone's always like, oh my god, no. I'm like excited to get older because I feel like just in the last year alone, like if you're constantly trying to like just be like a student of life and like learn about how you are as or who you are as a person to your core, like you're constantly figuring out new things about yourself. And this is kind of a little off topic from like the relationship stuff, but like to the point of me like saying how I started like reading again. And like I used to read all the time, got away from it when I was in school. And then now I'm like finding that love again. And it's just like, you can become anything you want to become. Like if you want to be a reader, all you have to do is start reading. Like if you want to start a podcast, all you have to do is start a podcast.
Or bodybuilding.
Like, or bodybuilding or literally anything.
The only person standing in your way is yourself.
100% because of like just doubt and not even that. Like if you wanted to do genuinely anything like surfing or like whatever that is, like you can just like identify, okay, I'm going to be a surfer. You're probably going to suck at it at first, but you can grow and be good at it.
It's like what the girlies say on TikTok is just be Delulu, because you can actually just do anything you set your mind to. You just have to say in your head, I'm going to be this now, and just keep showing up, and eventually you're going to be good at it. Or
exactly. This kind of circles into the imposter syndrome thing.
Yeah.
Not even trying.
It does.
We were talking earlier about imposter syndrome and how after we had released the last episode, I thought that I was like, what am I doing? Like, I can't be a podcaster.
What are we doing? Who's listening to
Yeah,
this?
exactly. And just like such like having like doubts in just like what you're doing or how you're showing up in life. And to the point of if you want to do anything, like you might suck at it at first, but if you just continue doing what you're like, if you say, I'm going to do this, and you go full steam ahead and you don't give up and you don't care what anyone else thinks, like that's a good thing. That means you're like heading in the right direction.
And you should be a little bit uncomfortable. Like new things should make you feel uncomfortable.
100%.
That means because if you're not getting uncomfortable, you're just staying stagnant.
Staying the same. And who wants to do that?
I know, it's not fun.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Like have you read the book Atomic Habits?
Yes.
I've told myself I would read it like once a year to like
smart.
remember, because it's just so informative, and I feel like the more you read it, like the more you learn. But the main thing that like stuck out, and a lot of people say this all the time on like the internet now, is like just 1% every day. Like if you can do one thing that day that is going to make you that much better for the subsequent day, like that's all it takes, because 1% after 365 days is 365%. Like you just became probably a whole different person.
It's like compound interest. It just adds up every
100%.
single day. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wow, all of those days really did add up.
Yeah.
That one little thing did make a difference. Yeah.
So like I always tell people like in the gym, like when it comes to like the gym, like take progress pictures, take videos, because like you're going to look back and you're going to wish that you had those comparisons to see how far you've made it. And to the imposter syndrome point, I wanted to just read this quote, which I shared with you earlier, but there's two of them. One says, all you need is the audacity to suck at something new and the stubbornness to keep sucking until you don't, and you can do anything in life.
I love that.
Isn't that so cute?
Yeah.
And then the other one was, if you don't feel at least a little bit like an imposter, if deep down there isn't even a tiny hint of the question, can I really do this? Then you haven't even scratched the surface of what you're actually capable of.
That's such a good point.
Which I love. I'm such a quotes girl.
No,
I love
it's
quotes.
so good. I know it's so good because it makes you think and it makes you realize I just need to keep showing up for myself every day, and eventually it's something is going to happen.
And then to the point of like having people in your corner like Derek and Joe and, you know, anyone that like messages and say like, you know, you're doing well, or like, I love the podcast, or whatever that may, like in whatever facet of life it is. It obviously feels good, especially if you're a words of affirmation girly.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just reaffirms like, hey, I can do this. And even if someone's not giving you those like positive affirmations, just you have to have like a little bit of like delusional belief in yourself.
Yeah. And just having people in your corner that support you and understand your vision and want you to be better, because there are people that might sneakily want your downfall. So it's nice to have friends and a relationship too that they're trying to help you be your best every day.
Yeah.
Which also helps.
I think that's super important, just to the point of like your close circle. Like you are who you surround yourself with.
It's so true.
So like if you have people in your life that are just constantly like questioning you or making you feel like silly or stupid, like for doing whatever it is that like, let's say it sets your soul on fire or whatever, like whatever you're doing, if someone's making you question that, maybe reconsider if you want them in that energy in your life. I'm like a huge believer in energy and not like chakras and things like that, but like just like vibes and energy. Like I think it's manifestation, all of those things. I think it's 100% valid. And
it is. And that's we are doing a podcast on friendships and stuff like that in another episode, because that's a whole topic I really want to get into with you. So we have to go deep on that.
For sure. Oh, to that point though, with like having people, whether it's like people doubt you or, like friends that aren't like supportive of you, I don't think it's necessary to just cut those people off. I think it's another thing of having a conversation and being just honest with them about your feelings, because at the end of the day, maybe they don't know, maybe they're not self-aware enough to realize that that's what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, if people are coming at you or not supportive of you, it's probably a reflection of themselves and how they feel about themselves, and not of how they feel about you. Maybe it's a jealousy thing. Maybe it's you know, they wish that they had the confidence to do what you were doing or pursue certain things that maybe they're too scared to. And so I think it's just having the conversation. And then if they're not willing to have that conversation and make those changes, then that's when it's time to set a boundary, time to, you know, remove the toxicity and the negative energy from your life.
I actually ran into this earlier last year, like middle of last year. And I was like having this conversation with Derek about this specific person, because I didn't know if I should just cut them off completely, and then he told me just evaluate the friendship. Like, how close are you actually? Because me and this person were spending a lot of time together, and it wasn't even a friend that it was worth having a discussion with, but it was one of those people that it's like, okay, we can still hang out and spend time together, but we don't have to be best friends. Is that like, and
makes sense.
And that was hard for me, because I'm someone that's very much like, okay, if I feel like there's an issue, it needs to be talked about. But because of the whole situation, it just wasn't.
It wasn't like in the best interest of the friendship to do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't have really done anything.
Yeah. How do you feel like the way that you show up in friendships has changed? like over the last however many years, like let's say from college to now?
That's a really good question. And yes, I feel like, and you can tell me if you feel the same way. I feel like we, especially younger in college, even in the last couple of years, we get super invested in our friends, like relationships, friendships, stuff like that. So when you have really good friends that are coming to you for advice, you give so much of yourself into giving this advice and like knowing way too much information probably about your friends' relationships and stuff like that, and it can become extremely draining. And I try not to do that all the time now. I want people to be able to vent to me, and I'm going to try to help them come to a conclusion themselves versus giving my opinion all the time unless they like really want my opinion.
And telling them what you think they should do instead of presenting the options of like, maybe they aren't as self-aware, so like you can help them get to that point, but still letting them make the decisions for themselves and like not trying to force your own opinion on them. I totally agree.
Yes, and just maybe someone doesn't even want your advice anyway. They just want to vent, and you can just be like, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. Do you want my advice or whatever? Or what do you think you should do about it or whatever?
I think that's such a good point about just being able to show up for anyone, whether it's a friend or a relationship. Is not, I do this sometimes in my relationship where, let's say Joe's venting to me about X, Y, and Z, and I automatically start giving him solutions. And it's like, pump the brakes, Kennedy. Maybe he doesn't need solutions. Maybe he just needs to be heard. Maybe he needs to be asked questions about, oh, like, well, how does that make you feel? Or, you know, what do you want to do about it? Or whatever it may be, instead of just being like, oh, no, it's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. We're going to do this. Like, I've had to like learn how to navigate those things, because for me, I feel like I've had a tendency, like when I was younger, and maybe a little bit now, but definitely less so, of being like a people pleaser. And
Same.
I think it's just like always like maybe a little bit of perfectionism, like always just trying to like have the answers and be there for someone. But you also have to take a step back and be like, well, maybe this isn't how this person needs me to show up. So I've gotten a lot better. I hope maybe Joe can attest to this. Yeah. I think I've gotten better at when certain conversations or statements are brought up. I ask like, do you need comfort? Do you need solutions? Like, how can I help you? And then let them tell you what they need.
That's a really good
in friendships and relationships.
That's really good advice, because even if like your thing is to start giving solutions, or maybe another thing is someone is complaining, like they're annoyed at something, and you're like kind of hyping them up more by being like, yeah, this is so bad and this and that. And it's like, well, maybe you're going to make them feel worse doing that. So,
for real. I agree with that.
So going back to finding your independence in a relationship, because a lot of people start losing themselves in a relationship. So that's something that Derek and I have been doing since the beginning. We are both like extremely independent on our own, and we're super whole individuals on our own. So when we are together, we're extremely secure in our relationships, because we're not looking for the other person to
like validate or reassure.
Yes. Like we're not finding ourselves in the other, if that makes sense. So, and I know I hear a lot of times people struggle with that. They want like their whole life is their person, when it's really healthy to have your separate things outside of the relationship too. So,
yeah. And I think that's something that, like I said, I struggled with, where I did probably lose myself a little bit in the beginning. And it's hard because, like, especially when you're so similar to someone, it's really hard to kind of not be that way. But I also think that, like when Joe and I first started dating, if you don't know about like the attachment styles, like you had just mentioned, you and Derek are both older, you know, very aware of who you are as people, like have developed that on your own. Whereas like, I feel like I've never really understood who I was in a relationship, and to the point of like people pleasing. Like I always just wanted to like do and give like for whatever partner I had, because I felt like that was what was needed of me.
It's like it'll make them love you more or something.
But that's not true.
No.
And so like I, over time, I haven't been in too many relationships, but definitely developed like an anxious attachment style just from like my past and like past relationships, you know, my childhood, whatever. I need to go to therapy probably.
Probably
But this is why I like research all of this stuff myself, because
Mm-hmm.
like if, I haven't gone to therapy, I do think everyone should. I should,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a hypocrite because I don't. And I think everyone should just like do it to learn more about themselves. But there's a whole kind of like nuance with, or not nuance, but there's a whole kind of stigma with therapy as far as not being able to find the right fit and like not like vibing with someone or whatever that may be. But yeah, definitely like knowing if you have an anxious or like avoidant attachment style, because that's kind of the dynamic that Joe and I were more heavily in when we first started dating than now. I definitely feel like more securely attached than ever before. So it's always nice to be able to look back and like see how much your relationship has grown. So that's really cool. And I think it's important to not like, when it comes to a relationship, know when the person is like worth fighting for. Like, is this like, do we vibe and have a lot of beliefs that are matched where this is going to be a synergistic relationship and we just kind of have to figure our own stuff out? Or like, is this really not going to gel? Because like with me and Joe, it was never a question of like, is he right for me? Like 100% he is my person, but it's a matter of like trying to figure out how we can best show up in the relationship and be there for one another and heal our own inner child or whatever that looks like in order to be the best partner for the other person.
That's really cool that you have been able to grow together in the relationship, because sometimes they say you either grow together, you grow apart type of thing. So it's really cool that you've been able to grow more.
Yeah, it's super cool to look back on, just seeing like how much the dynamic of our relationship has changed and how much safer we have both made each other feel, because we both had like pretty bad relationship traumas. And so I think that's where it came from, is like we had relationship trauma and didn't process it. And then we got into a relationship with each other because it was like right person, right time, like 100%. I wasn't looking for a relationship, neither was he. And, we found each other, which is great, but we definitely both weren't like healed from those previous experiences, which is why I think it's super important when you get out of a relationship to, everyone always talks about like, checking off like boxes as far as like making sure that you're not going to end up with someone that was like X, Y, and Z in the past. But not a lot of people reflect on themselves
For sure.
after relationships and being
That's so
like,
true.
well, how was I showing up in the relationship? Because had I done that X amount of relationships ago, I maybe would have realized I was a people pleaser instead of just jumping right into the next relationship, doing those same things, giving too much of myself.
You definitely, when you can't reflect on your own issue, like sure, maybe the other person was horrible, but you also have to realize, where am I? I'm not perfect either. And if you are being a people pleaser, you're just going to continue attracting the same types of people over and over again. So if you can reflect on that, that's super important too.
One of my friends went through a pretty bad breakup, and she claimed that she was not going to talk to a single man, anybody, for a year before she started dating again. And she's done it. Like, she has like found her solitude. She knows who she is as a person. She knows what she wants to do. She has girl bossed herself to the sun. Like, she is doing wonders for herself. And if she had just gotten into bed with someone else or like started like hooking up and talking to other guys, then it's not going to happen. And who knows where she would be today if she didn't take that time to learn about herself and grow. And I think I would recommend that for anyone that just got out of a relationship.
I would too. And that's exactly what helped me grow as a person, because when I got out of my last relationship, I was single for over 2 years. And then I met Derek, and it was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Honestly.
And now to your point, like, you're securely attached. Like, you know who you are. You've lived on your own. You've figured out what you like. You like salsa dancing. You like going to the gym and bodybuilding and doing all these fun things that like make you who you are. And you're never going to lose sight of that, because you have so much confidence in that.
And it's so cool to look back on, because I look back at who I was 2 years ago, and I'm like, who is that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who that person is.
We love
so,
that.
Yeah. So it's
Girl.
really cool that your friend did that.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's important to take that time and just figure out who you are before you move on to the next. And it's so funny because I even made this is so funny. I made a list when I got out of my last relationship, and I was like, I'm gonna write down every single thing I want in a man, in my future husband. And I'm not even kidding. Derek is every single thing on the list.
I love that.
And I was like, that's so funny. I manifested you.
We love that. Shout out Derek. I've never met him, but I love him already.
Yeah. So it's really cool. But
that's awesome.
I know.
I saw a video one time that said, similar to what I said earlier, like everyone always talks about the red flags of like the partner, but like, what were your red flags?
What are your red flags?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And my issue was that people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to attract like narcissistic people, people that don't respect you.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to try to take advantage of you and manipulate you and everything. So
now you know who you are, so that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's great. I feel like good advice for everyone.
Yeah, I need to have a strong sense of self for sure to attract a healthy partner, and for you to be a healthy partner as well.
Yeah, I think too, just not always blaming everything, like not having a victim mindset, not blaming everything on the other person, because when a relationship doesn't work, it very well could be because, you know, one person is just straight up not showing up, not putting in the effort. But also, what could you be doing better? Like, could you have been loving them any differently? And it's not to say that that's the case, but reflect, because there was like a lot of things that, again, when like Joe and I first started dating, it's not like the whole love languages. Like I showed my love one way, he showed his love another way. But if we don't realize that that's how the other person is showing love, because that's not how we receive it, then you might think that that person is not doing anything to love you, but they think that they're doing all of these things. You're just not receiving it well. So it's just super important to have those conversations about expectations and like how to show up for one another. Also with expectations, like not expecting.
Yeah.
Because like having like certain expectations of like, oh, they always need to do this. You're not always going to be able to show up 100%. So I've seen on like Instagram or whatever, not through therapy, I've seen like people say like, if you know, you're not really having like the best day, like tell your partner, like I'm at 50% today. Like I can't operate any higher than that. And so then your partner knows like, okay, they're at 50%. I'm maybe at a 70%, but I'm doing better than them. So I got to pick up their extra 50. You know what I mean?
So true.
So
yeah,
I think it's just having like those honest conversations and honest reflections. And if you're not thinking about this stuff, you need to be.
You should. And that's something I used to struggle with a lot. Just not even in relationships, just in general, is if I'm having a bad day or feeling some type of way, I felt like I just wouldn't ever say anything. So then that causes a lot of issues too.
I'm the same, or used to be the same.
Right. And that's because you might think that you're going to get in trouble or someone's going to get mad at you for not.
It's the people pleasing.
Yeah.
Like just quieting your own voice because you don't want to cause any like chaos, or you don't want to cause any conflict. It's like conflict isn't always bad.
And you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not going to be speaking up on your feelings or how you're feeling that day. And one thing that Derek has really helped me feel safe doing is just saying like, I am feeling really sassy today and I'm not going to take it out on you. But if it comes across that way, I'm just letting you know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's okay. Thanks for letting me know, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I love that. That's so sweet.
Just being able to say those simple things, even if they seem so simple, it can be really hard for people to just express that. So communication is just really important.
Yeah. Should we do some of those questions?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to our little questions advice segment. So here you start, because I don't know, it's screenshots.
So many.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll ask you this one.
Okay.
Opinions on long distance relationships.
Okay, so I'm in a long distance relationship, but I mean, they can work if you're with the right person. Both people just have to be willing to, you know, give effort, because there's a lot more effort involved when you don't live 15 minutes away from each other. You have to drive however far, fly however far to your person. But just active communication, giving each other attention and stuff like that. You don't have to be, I mean, I don't text all day, every day. You just need to have trust and just communicate and make an effort with each other.
I think this also, maybe you can be better at with this because I'm not in a long distance relationship, but like, do you feel like having like the expectations set beforehand as far as like how often you like plan to see each other and like what that looks like and how reasonable that is for you? Because maybe some person is like, I could go seeing you once a month and be fine, but maybe you would rather see them, you know, every other weekend or, you know, whatever just amount of time that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to say how often you want to see each other, because that's, you just need to have that set just so you make sure you're on the same page. And of course, some months stuff might come up, but just being communicative.
Also, you had said earlier, like when you guys are together, it's not like you're never on your phone, like you're never checking your phone or whatever. But I think that's huge for long distance relationships is when you are only seeing someone for like 3 days on the weekend. Don't be on your phone, like scrolling on like social media, unless it's like, hey, we're winding down at the end of the night. We're both like being on our phones and we're not, you know, being present. But like, if you only have a short amount of time, don't waste it not being present with one another. I think it's a lot different with like Joe and I, where we're like living together and just making sure you have certain boundaries of like, hey, maybe after, you know, 8, 9 o'clock at night, phones are in the kitchen. Like that's that. And this is our like quality time where like we're not going to be distracted. But obviously it's a little bit different when you're long distance versus living together.
I think it is good to have, you might have need some time to just be on your phone away, like your own little checkout time. But of course, just having that set of, okay, I'm not going to just be on my phone while you're trying to hang out with me.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, what do you consider cheating
in a relationship?
Yes.
Oh goodness,
because so many people have different opinions on this.
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
think
curious.
No, I maybe have I think like any type of like emotional or like any type of like emotional flirting where like that person is aware that there's a little bit of like oomph behind it, where it's not just like, oh, I'm just being nice to this person. It's like, oh, I think this person is attractive and I'm being a little bit more flirtatious and I can tell that they're flirting back with me. You know, people might say that's innocent. I consider that like emotional like infidelity, where it's like maybe that's not a reason to entirely break up with someone if like no acts of cheating actually occurred. But if that's happening, even if there's no like intimacy, like physical intimacy, and like that's going on and on and on, and like your partner is developing like an infatuation with another person over time, and like communicating via like whatever social media platforms or text messaging, and it's like flirty, cheating. I think sending nudes, cheating. I think having any type of physical intimacy with someone, kiss, sex, anything, cheating. I don't know if that's like the right answer, the wrong answer, if there's like other levels to it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I always say, if you would feel guilty if your significant other, if you wouldn't feel comfortable with your significant other being there during that conversation or like reading that conversation, it's cheating.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was trying to get at too, with like the emotional like connection, apart from like the emotional connection. If it's something that you would be guilty about, like not just being nice to someone. Like if you're a guy, you can have friends that are girls and vice versa, and be nice and cordial and, you know, compliment their shirt or compliment their pants or whatever that may be. And like, it's fine. Like, I don't think that's cheating. No. That's just being a nice, genuine human being. But it's like, if you're having these thoughts or feelings and you're acting on them and then feeling guilty for it, cheating.
What are your thoughts about liking Instagram photos?
I think it's silly and stupid. I don't know. I used to feel differently. Like, I used to think that I used to maybe get like butthurt about it and just be like, like, why? But I was also younger and more insecure. And I think that you just kind of have to like be honest and question yourself. Like, why am I feeling uncomfortable that this person is like liking someone else's Instagram? It's Instagram. Like, if it's, you know, a naked picture, maybe just don't like that, so I don't have to see it pop up on my page. Like, if you like it in your head, fine. Right. But I think it's just like having the conversation with your partner about if how that
What your
makes you feel.
boundaries are.
Yeah. And if you have the conversation, if it does upset you, reflect, wonder why it upsets you, have the conversation with your partner. And then if you express like, hey, you know, this behavior upsets me a little bit. I don't like that it upsets me. I wish that it didn't. But like, could you just be mindful of that moving forward? And if they are, great. If not,
they should validate your feelings.
you.
They shouldn't make you feel crazy for thinking that, because it's completely valid. I'm fine with liking Instagram photos. Like, who cares?
I don't think it's a big deal.
The thing I have an issue with is if you were to go on some girl's page and like her photos, like deliberately trying to send a message.
Yeah, I mean, that's weird.
But if it's just on your page, like, who cares?
If you're scrolling and it's just like, oh, like the post, like the caption, whatever,
it's not
who cares?
That deep.
It's not that deep.
I agree.
And if you are feeling like it's deep, I have in the past, and I was insecure at that point in time in those relationships. So,
yeah, and there might be some other deep-rooted thing that's going on too.
I think too, also, like, if you've been cheated on and you're just like having this, again, like trauma triggering response of like, oh, this like means something, like maybe it doesn't, like,
or I mean, if you do have an issue with it, then just tell your person, and if they really love you, they're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, and they'll validate you.
Because maybe it just is a boundary for you. Who knows?
Have you ever been cheated on?
No.
Never.
Lucky. Well, at least not to my knowledge.
True.
Well, I did. So the guy I was dating in college, I remember he moved into an apartment or something, and I read all his texts on his phone, and he was texting this girl while I was still in college, because he graduated before me. He was texting this girl and was like, come over, I'll give you a tour of my house. And she's like, don't you have a girlfriend? And he's like, you don't know that.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's basically cheating.
I mean, I think it's just a little sneaky and whatever, but
he had intentions.
Who
knows if he actually did anything? Yeah. I don't know, whatever.
Okay, kind of in the cheating realm, do you believe in second chances for people?
Yeah, I do.
I do too.
Yeah. I think people are always like, oh, people don't change. But I mean, look at yourself a year ago. We're completely different people. We grow a lot. And I mean, if you truly love someone and they love you, they can show you in their actions if they've changed. And if you're willing, if you really did love them and they give you a genuine apology, you can kind of see through their actions how much you're willing to trust them again.
Yeah. And I think if it's a situation where someone had cheated on you, again, I think there's different circumstances when it comes to cheating that maybe people would get back together with their partner for. I personally don't know that I could never do that from like a cheating standpoint, just because like once that trust is broken, I think it's really hard to like be able to trust someone after they've like done that to you.
And I don't believe in second chances if someone was like verbally or like physically abusive or something like that. Like, just stay away from me. Like, sure, I forgive you. I just don't want anything to do with you. Just keep that away from me.
I think if it's though like a situation where you're just like not healed, not seeing eye to eye. Like, I mean, there's plenty of people that break up and then realize like, oh my gosh, what the heck is happening? Like, what was going on in that relationship that like what was I not doing the right way? And if you truly wanted to be with that person and genuinely love that person, then 100% I think you could get back together with them. But if it's, you know, ever making you question like your worth or like your value as a person, if they cheated on you, like those are some things that I don't know if I could ever look over.
Right. And yeah, just speaking to that point of maybe thinking, oh, what's going on and stuff. If you're in an argument with, whether it be a friend or in a relationship, sometimes we are can be very emotionally reactive and impulsive people. So sometimes people say something they don't mean in the moment, and then if they can come back and apologize after, it's like, well, I'll probably give you a second chance. So I guess it just depends on the situation.
Yeah, I agree. And just being honest again with yourself.
And then also, I could talk about, we got to talk another time, I guess, about being like emotionally reactive and acting on impulse and stuff like that. Cause that's something I used to struggle with a lot, just getting really caught up in an emotion and not thinking logically. And you might say or do things that you don't mean.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to have like a timeout. Like if you're like, if a fight or conversation or whatever is not being productive, you just need to, that's hard for me, is like pausing it and just be like, I'm coming back to this. But if you're like in the heat of the moment and just like emotional and like not really like thinking logically, it's going to be really hard to have like a productive conversation where you're going to get anywhere. So like taking a step back and being like, let's just talk about this in a few hours or tomorrow or whatever, then do that. Don't just brush it under the rug and never circle back around. But I think it's, a huge thing that can definitely help a lot of situations in a relationship for sure.
That's really a good point to say that, because I think some people struggle with maybe one person in a relationship is like, I need to talk about this right now. And another person is like, no, I need a minute. So learning to be able to respect the other person and okay, we're going to talk, because you said you were like that.
That's how Joe and I am. Like, I'm always the person that wants to like fix it right away. I think I've gotten better at it. I don't know. But I've been the person that like just kind of wants to resolve the issue right then and there. But the conversations are so much more productive after both parties have like the time away from one another to clear their head. I think sometimes like writing like a note or like a letter like to someone can like also help. Just putting pen to paper like helps you get your thoughts out and organizes them. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big thing that could come into play for sure.
I agree, especially because something I've always struggled with is verbalizing my emotions. So sometimes just writing them down can be helpful, either allowing them to read it or reading it off. And it might seem like kind of corny, but if it's going to help you have a productive conversation, a respectful conversation.
And I think too, it might help the other person like understand where you're coming from a little bit more. I don't know why, but I think just when like when you write something down and like someone is like reading what you're writing instead of like hearing you say it, like they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I feel bad. Like, why is this like, I feel so horrible that they feel this way, instead of like maybe getting frustrated with like your tone or your delivery. Like they're going to read it how they, perceive you to be, if you're feeling sad or whatever that looks like.
That's so true. Especially if you have, I know I can come off sometimes in a way that I don't mean to. And if you write it down, like you said, someone can't hear maybe an attitude of some kind that you might not mean to. When I used to get in trouble as a kid, I used to write my parents letters.
You used to write them letters?
Yeah, I'd be like, I'm sorry. I think they still have them saved.
That's so funny.
Okay, what are the 3 most important factors for you getting into a relationship? I guess like factors, would that be like your values, like most important values in a relationship? Or
that's a good question. 3 most important factors when getting into a relationship. I think having maybe not good communication at first, because that was not always the case with me and Joe. I think our communication was good in the beginning, and then it kind of when we got a little bit more comfortable with each other and like the traumas kind of came through, like it was a little bit maybe harder to communicate, but willingness to communicate, I think, is the big thing. So
as long as you're trying.
As long as it's like a constant effort of like trying to be better about showing up in conversations, I think that's huge. I think having the same views on like marriage and just like the family that you want, like establishing that. It seems silly to kind of establish that early on. I don't think you have to, be like, on the first date, hey, do you want to have kids? Like, what does that look like for you? But I think just knowing fairly early on, like, what are their thoughts on marriage? What are their thoughts on children? And then hopefully they're not lying to you, because that would stink.
Right.
But then knowing that you're on like the same page, you have the same views from that standpoint. I don't necessarily think that like political views or like things like that matter too much, unless like someone's like very heavy one way and the other person isn't, then I think it could be an issue. What else? I think someone that's gonna just like always like show up for you and like be like your undying support system, like no matter what. If you're going through it and you are like super depressed or you get super sick and you know it's things that are going to happen and be unexpected, like that person's not going to judge you and they're just going to like be there for you and like just love you unconditionally, I think is huge. And I feel like you can tell that about someone like fairly early on.
For sure. You can kind of tell based off of what their other relationships are like, whether it's like with their family or friends, even if they don't have a ton of, I mean, no one has to have a ton of friends, but like how someone treats others in general. And you can kind of, I feel like some people get in these toxic relationships that the other person doesn't respect them, or they just don't respect each other. And you can tell when you're in a healthy, loving dynamic when you can feel mutual respect, which just seems like such a simple thing, but it is uncommon.
So important,
too, and important, super important.
I agree.
So
what are yours?
Oh, I mean, I think you nailed it, honestly. I feel like you need to be on the same page of if you want to get married and have kids and stuff, because if someone doesn't want to get married and someone does, why are you going to waste your time? And then just, yeah, being able to communicate mutual respect, and then being able to like have a good time together, but someone that's going to show up for you when it's hard too, because like, sure, you can go and have the best time with someone, but are they going to be there for you when shit gets hard, like you said? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And just, I think also being silly, like that is so important to me. Like I feel like mine and Joe's relationship is so silly, and like I love it because it makes me feel like even as we're like getting older, like we can still be like young and goofy, and like it kind of makes me excited to like, I don't want to have kids anytime soon, but like when we do have kids, like I never want to be like a parent that's like such a parent and like overbearing, and like, you know, I want to be able to show up for my children, but I also want them to just feel the silliness and the goofiness and the love. And like, I feel like that's something that Joe and I have and share, that like I'm so excited to just be like silly with like a little kid.
Yeah, you have
not for 10 years, don't worry. But still.
You have to be able to be playful and have fun. And we always say like roasting each other is our love language, because you have to be able to like, you know, talk a little bit of
smack.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So I know being able to be playful and being like a kid is so important.
It's so fun. Like it just keeps everything so like light and just always knowing that like you can like dance in the kitchen and be silly and like goofy and like not fear being judged. Like every single time that like Joe and I are super silly with each other, not every time, but I think to myself, like I've definitely been in relationships where I've acted similar or this way, and like the person that you're with is like, what are you
getting
doing?
the ick, but someone that will match your energy
Exactly.
or just laugh at you.
Exactly. And it's like laughing in like a playful way, like I'm not making fun of you. I just think that like you're super cute and like
you're cute and goofy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love that. It's super important to me.
It is. It really is. I think that was good. Should we end it? Yeah. There was one. Can you have more than one best friend?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I have like so many different best friends, and like honestly, I don't feel like I have just like one person that like is like my ride or die that I go to. Like I feel like I have different friends that I go to for different things.
Yeah.
And
they
like
fulfill you in different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think you have to only have one best friend. And I think if you do, that's fine. Like that's okay. Like if you have your ride or die, like great. But I have all my ride or dies and I love them all equally. And I think that they like add to my life in different ways.
I couldn't have said it better. Same.
Bestie. Chloe's like my newest bestie, and I love her.
I know, I love it. It was just like instant love. We had love at first sight.
We really were.
But I think that wraps things up, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode.
And that's it.
Slay.
Bye.
Bye.
That was so cute.
So fun. I have to pee.
I know, me too. Go.